Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palumbo. Now today we're going to be continuing our lecture on the movie business. Whence last we left off, we were going over product placement. So I'm going to pick that up today just a little bit. We're also going to be going through movie studios and primary franchises that each movie studio is responsible for. There's been a lot of talk and discussion in the industry surrounding franchises. We see movie franchises everywhere now, in particular in movie theaters. More and more franchises seem to be pushing out mid-level or mid-budget movies. If we think about mid-budget movies like perhaps The Hangover or like any of the most recent dramas, say Joker, a lot of these comedies and dramas tend to cost less. And so as a result of that, they don't have the pop and pow of superhero movies, of fantasy movies, that really do warrant a huge, inclusive theatrical experience. And so Hollywood right now is going through a lot of platform issues as we speak right now. Do superhero movies strictly belong in movie theaters? Do we really need to debut any more Hangover movies in movie theaters? Do we need to debut any more Kevin Hart movies or any other kinds of comedy movies starring Will Smith in movie theaters? Because it seems to be the case that movie theaters do well and do best with superhero and fantasy movies. Those movies are guaranteed blockbusters. They're guaranteed to be successes. And largely, movies need to accrue between 2 to 3 times what they cost in order to break even in the movie theater system. But as you can see from recent box office hits, such as Jurassic Park, such as the Avengers franchise as well, we can see here time and time again, budgets that are 100 million, 200 million, 300 million are making back $1 billion, 1 billion, 2 billion. And so there's a lot of opportunity here for superhero and fantasy movies in movie theaters. But the question is, does this oust horror movies? Does it oust other kinds of movie genres who traditionally have been in movie theaters but may find homes on SVOD services? And in fact, we found that. Go on Netflix or Hulu after this lecture and browse thrillers and horrors. You're going to see a fairly robust selection. And more horror and thriller movies seem to be migrating over to SVOD services rather quickly. And so with all of that being said, let's get started. So to review, product placement. Now last time we were talking about product placement being kind of this delicate balance, right? We know that too much product placement can lead to skepticism and even interruption. We also know that primarily the best genres to offer any kind of product placement include humor and romance. And so PG-13 is where most product placement lies, of course, and Paramount Pictures has been found to have the most product placement, at least from 2002 to 2012. And Paramount Pictures is part of Viacom, which also owns MTV, VH1, and BET, so it does follow suit that a company that might be targeting younger demographics would infuse its movies with product placement. After all, younger consumers are more inclined to notice product placement, to be influenced by product placement, and may be interested in trying the product itself. Let's keep going. So what types of product placement are there in movies? Well, we can see here Tom Hanks opening up a FedEx box in Castaway, and we also have a younger Jeff Goldblum looking at a Coca-Cola can in Jurassic Park. And so chief types of product placement do include automobile, electronic equipment, and media and entertainment in movies. We've also seen electronic equipment as well as nonprofit organizations which are inclined to be displayed in close-ups. And that's something else to kind of note here. A product placement may occur up close, it may be part of the dialogue, or it may be used to kind of enrich and enhance the scene and to be able to tell different kinds of storylines. We all have different perceptions of somebody who may drive a BMW, somebody who drinks Starbucks or Stella Artois, or who wears Armani Exchange, or who wears Gap clothes, or who wears Victoria's Secret. And so we know that we have different perceptions of these brands, and these associations kind of agglomerate onto people who are engaged in these products. Let's keep going. So to really turn over a bit away from product placement, which again is on the increase as movie studios are scrambling to find other kinds of ancillary revenue streams, because as we know, DVD sales are down, Blu-ray system DVDs are down as well. And so movie studios and their franchises, this particular segue offers kind of a unique opportunity in looking at each studio differently. There have been tons and tons of film studios, but there are really only primarily 6 that are super, super strong at this juncture. So let's get started. So Disney, this is an easy one for all of us. Disney just launched Disney Plus a few weeks ago as of this broadcast. Disney was began by Walt Disney in 1923. He was from Kansas City, Missouri, and he was a cartoonist, but he was also a failed cartoonist. Walt Disney did work for a newspaper in Kansas City, and he was fired for lacking imagination. So if you can believe that, please feel free to Google it. It is a true story. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper because he lacked imagination. Never give up. That is the takeaway there for sure. So first Disney movie that Disney is able to put out is Snow White and Seven Dwarfs in 1937. Begins as an animation studio. He eventually, by 1949, begins to get into live action. He actually also gets into documentaries. National Geographic owes a lot to Walt Disney. He was really one of the first to kind of pioneer shooting documentaries about nature, shooting documentaries in the jungle, really going to South America quite often. That was something he liked to do. He went to Africa as well. Walt Disney, though, declared bankruptcy at least twice during his life. And so he was somebody who constantly was putting everything on the line, constantly failing, and then becoming the great success that he is today. Movie franchises here do include the Marvel Universe, Star Wars Universe, Pirates of the Caribbean, Toy Story, The Incredibles, and really the rest of our childhood. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it really is the case. Walt Disney really created kind of an ecosystem that really hadn't been seen before in the entertainment industry. An ecosystem in which family entertainment could be housed of all types, of all stripes. And this was something that has evolved throughout the decades. Walt Disney was also one of the first to pioneer the theme park, a place in which families could go to and interact with characters and interact with rides and be able to kind of ensconce themselves in some sort of Disney fantasy that, beforehand they'd only been able to view on a screen. And so Walt Disney really is the architect for a lot of what we see today in entertainment, both passive and interactive. And we have a lot to owe to Walt Disney. Let's keep going. Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers began as a movie studio started by 4 brothers from Poland in 1923. There is a book I highly recommend. It is by Neil Gabler, I believe. The title of the book is How the Jews Invented Hollywood. Absolutely breathtaking book, absolutely interesting. A lot of these film studios were founded by poor, broke immigrants who were Jewish and who largely came from Poland and Hungary and frankly tried to find work in the United States, tried to assimilate, but were regularly denied the opportunity to do so. And so Warner Brothers is founded by 4 brothers from Poland who were Jewish and who, again, struggled to find work in the United States because when they came over here, people were not as inclined to hire or engage with Jewish populations, unfortunately. In the 1930s, Warner Brothers was focused on gangster and action films. The Public Enemy, Little Caesar, Angels with Dirty Faces, which is a very, very good movie. I've had the pleasure of watching that. Its current movie franchises include J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World, Batman, DC Extended Universe, Superman, and The Purge. And so what I should also mention here is that, film studios began, many of the ones that we're going to be going over, began some 100 years ago. Nickelodeon's which is not just the name of a cable channel, but a small movie house. Nickelodeons were these kind of small movie jukeboxes where you could go to like an amusement park or a theme park or a boardwalk, and you could pay 5 cents and go into, you know, the Nickelodeon, and you can watch like a 30-second clip of somebody, tripping over a banana peel or something like that. But that's where the phrase Nickelodeon actually came from. It was a nickel to literally see these movies. And so a lot of these Jews saw an opportunity here because nobody was hiring them, nobody was giving them a fair shot here in the United States, and so they decided to hire themselves and go into business themselves. Let's keep going. Universal began by Carl Laemmle in 1912. Again, another Jewish immigrant who came over here. It began as a horror film studio in the 1930s. It was the horror film studio. And so Dracula, Wolfman, The Mummy, Phantom of the Opera, The Man Who Laughs, which actually influenced the creation of Joker. And so you'll see that in the early stages of these film studios, all these studios were really set on perfecting a genre, really sharpening their acumen, sharpening their production skills, sharpening their deliverables when it came to really selling a genre. And many of you, or hopefully some of you, will remember that a few years ago they did try to kind of reignite this with Tom Cruise in The Mummy. And if you don't remember this, then you know what the problem was. Unfortunately, nobody really went to go see The Mummy. It was kind of a failure. I think this is 2015 this movie came out. And so as a result, Universal kind of pulled the plug, at least so far, with any more horror movies. Movie franchises here do include Jurassic Park, Fast and the Furious, The Secret Life of Pets, and Despicable Me. Let's keep going. Lionsgate. Lionsgate is really, really strange. This movie studio is barely 30 years old. And so, it's about 23. It's going to be 23 years old. Keith, let me start that slide again.
Cool, go right into it.
I don't know why I'm off today. Lionsgate. Lionsgate is a very, very odd film studio. This began in 1997, some 22 years ago, almost 23 years ago. It was began by Frank Giustra. And so Lionsgate is notable for acquiring assets. This is kind of the first film studio that really began acquiring assets before Disney made it a thing. Because Lionsgate was so small to begin with, they've kind of made it their business to be an acquiring company. Now, Disney obviously has also fallen in line with this. It's acquired Lucas Studios, it's acquired the Avengers, it's acquired 20th Century Fox. And so it's notable for acquiring Summit Entertainment, Stars, Artisan. It owns Dirty Dancing, Will and Grace. It owns over 13,000 films. And so it is valued for its sheer volume of films that it offers its audience. Currently seen as a key asset for firms such as Comcast, Amazon, and Viacom, who are rumored to have made offers for purchase. And so this is kind of another piece, if you will, that a lot of media empires are looking at to try to build up to something gargantuan and something that can kind of hold itself and sustain itself against an ever-increasing Disney. And we'll see what happens with Netflix, but we're seeing the entertainment juggernauts right now going at it. Movie franchises here do include Saw, The Hunger Games, John Wick, and Now You See Me. Let's keep going. Columbia Pictures, Sony Columbia Pictures. This began as Columbia Pictures by Harry Cohn in 1924, yet again another Jewish immigrant. Known for its westerns and comedies at first, but it was later absorbed by Sony in 1989 for $3.4 billion. Now this is significant because Sony is a Japanese company. And so it really is the only major US studio, if you will, that has international ties. Certainly Lionsgate has Canadian ties, and that can't be overlooked, but some 30 years ago, it was a very big deal for a US studio to be absorbed by an international company like Sony. And so its movie franchises do include Spider-Man and Ghostbusters. Let's keep going. Paramount Pictures. Created by Adolf Zucker in 1916, once again, another Jewish immigrant. And so, focused on comedies at first as well, it had remarkable success in the 1980s. Indiana Jones, Beverly Hills Cop, Friday the 13th, the list goes on and on. Paramount had an excellent decade in the 1980s. It was sold to Viacom in 1994, and for a period, it was aligned with DreamWorks SKG. That's Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Dave Geffen. That's what the SKG stands for. So those are three entertainment executives, highly successful entertainment executives. Let's keep going. 20th Century Fox, begun by William Fox in 1917. Yet again, another Jewish immigrant. It did not focus on one particular genre. 20th Century Fox kind of did a little bit of everything as it was going through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Purchased by Rupert Murdoch in 1985, absorbed by Disney in 2019. Movie franchises do include Planet of the Apes, Deadpool, Home Alone, Ice Age, How to Train Your Dragon, X-Men, and Kung Fu Panda. Recently, in August of 19, this is being filmed in November of 19, so a few months ago, Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, was not thrilled with 20th Century Fox. There was a scathing shareholders conference call in which he critiqued what was going on at 20th Century Fox. He has already moved some people at 20th Century Fox, and he is looking for people who can kind of put together movies and shows based around Planet of the Apes, Home Alone, I believe he mentioned Ice Age, and a few others there for the SVOD service. So he's already looking to mine the 20th Century Fox library and to create new installations of familiar franchises on the Disney Plus platform. Let's keep going. Movie product life cycle. This is important to understand as we kind of look down a little bit further into the movie business industry. It's good to know how movie studios are erected. It's good to know that product placement is obviously important here, but in understanding the movie product life cycle, you'll begin to get a better sense of what is going on in the movie studio business, what movie studios are grappling with currently, and where the movie studio system may go to in the future. Let's keep going. Fickle audiences, a case for audience fluctuation. So this particular data set is from Movio, M-O-V-I-O. It's an Australian company, and they are very adept at measuring movie audience consumption behavior. I've been very impressed with their work, and so I've worked to stay along with them as they release things for the public. The female audience increases by 20% consistently within the first 3 days of a movie release. So that's interesting as we're kind of looking at this. So you can see here on the right-hand side, the average age of a moviegoer, average annual moviegoing frequency, and male percentage of moviegoers. You can see it for each franchise there. So what we can see here is that you can see that younger audiences are more inclined to go to the movies first. So we can see here the opening night audience is 3 to 4 years younger than the Saturday and Sunday audiences. The opening night audience sees an average of 2.1 more movies per year than the Saturday and Sunday audience. And so it's important to kind of know these things as we're moving along in getting people into the movie theaters. It's a bit easier, generally speaking, to get males to come to the movie theater rather than females. But over time, females kind of begin to come in droves a bit more often. And it could very well be that for males, movie trailers may be very well more impactful than word of mouth. Females may very well rely on word of mouth a little bit more. But this is speculation, and further studies would need to be conducted to get a better sense of how these two particular ideas test out in actuality. Let's keep going. Avid young male moviegoers over-index on opening night. We know we get more males on opening night. We know that we get avid moviegoers over-indexing on opening night. We get younger moviegoers especially on cheap Tuesdays. The share of female audience grows in season. Saturday and Sundays are proportionally dominated by 30 to 50-year-olds. The 50-year-old audience declines at the slowest rate. So that generally means that whatever you have at the 50-year-old level, it's the most consistent. It's the most consistent rate. Let's keep going. From script to film. So some of you may have no idea how a movie is construed, but a few things have to happen. I recently finished a pilot of a TV show I'm hoping to pitch to some networks myself, and so I'm currently going through this as I am lecturing this to you. A script is written. That's first. First and foremost, a script is written. An agent is contacted. The agent may try to pull a producer to review a script to see if they like it. If a producer does like it, the producer will try to attach value or equity behind the script. After all, I have to have a reason why I want this script at all. This is known as a holding contract. And so I've written a script, fine, and I've gone ahead and I've secured, who's a good producer? J.J. Abrams. He produces and he directs. J.J. Abrams. So J.J. Abrams may say to me, well, we'd really like to get Will Smith on this. Of course, I say fine. And so he may try to find some financing for a holding contract. What does that mean? We tell Will Smith, listen, Will, we want you to sign this contract. We want to hold you for 6 months. We want to hold you from January 2021 to May 2021. We think that's when we're going to film this particular movie. Does Will Smith get paid if the movie doesn't get made? Yes. So it's absolutely a risk, but we're holding up his valuable time. He could be taking on other projects. He could be taking on movies, TV shows, commercials, podcasts, God knows what, another rap album. And so he could be doing a lot more. And so, it's important to be very, very careful when you put out a holding contract. Let's keep going. A producer will pitch the film spec to studios. That's usually the next thing that happens. If a studio likes the project, it will ask the producer to assemble actors, writers, producers, and a full script. Finally, if the assembled package is approved by the studio, it is said to be greenlit or green-lighted. And so once that happens, that means production is in full swing. The studio has often found investment partners at this point, but it may find more as the film is in production, especially if it's over budget. And we've seen this more and more, especially from international film studios. The Wanda Group out of China has been a major investor in a lot of different U.S. Films. And so a lot of international partners have come in the past to kind of help, fund films. What's the catch here? Well, if the Wanda Group comes in and helps me finance my movie with Will Smith, they become the sole distributor and marketer in China. So they're able to advertise and market the movie. They have full rights to distribute the movie to other movie theaters. Movie theaters in China have to pay them for the right to, screen said movie. And so it's very, very lucrative sometimes to have other partners coming in. You're able to co-finance. You're able to spread around risk as well. Let's keep going. The finished product is exhibited to studio executives for approval. Studio executives will watch something called dailies. Dailies are put together usually by production assistants or, assistant directors, things like that. They'll put together dailies, pretty much what's been done that day, what was shot that day, what was filmed that day. And remember, every script page is usually about a minute. So if you have watched a movie that is 120 minutes long, chances are the script was about 120 pages long. Generally speaking, on a set of a movie, you may film 3 to 5 minutes of a movie per day, believe it or not. And so it takes a lot of time to film a movie. Obviously, a lot of things depend. Movies are generally shot not in order. And so you may shoot all of the scenes at the grocery store that you need to. And you may have one scene in the beginning at the grocery store and then 2 at the very end in the grocery store. And you may shoot all of those within a week or within a few days. If there are notes on the film, the studio heads, executive producer, and writer, among others, may talk about them. Once the film is completed, Marketing and a release date are discussed. Box office deceiving because it is reliant on social buzz and trailers. And so this is an important thing to note. Please note this. The opening weekend of a movie, box office, is it reflective of quality? No. It is reflective of marketing and social buzz. And so it's important to kind of wait out movies when they come out, wait to see what other people say. It is possible, and I have seen this in the past, in which a movie has grossed $100 million opening box office weekend, or $80 million, or $70 million. But the next weekend, it tanked by about 40 or 50%. Why? Because maybe the movie just wasn't that good. And maybe it was the hype and buzz that really sold it. And remember, people purchase a ticket without even knowing what they're getting. It's quite a business. And so it's important to recognize that when we look at box offices, when we look at opening day box offices and things like that. Let's keep going. Who finances films? Well, really anyone. In the 1990s and into the 2000s, quite a number of Wall Street investors invested in movies. It wasn't a really good idea. The recession hit, banks froze, and it kind of created this situation in which banks were not really lending out money. Wall Street executives were pissed and furious because they were not able to recoup any kind of investments from a lot of the movies they invested in. Why did this happen? Well, investing in a movie is kind of sexy, right? To the executive or to the Wall Street broker that has 6 cars, 3 homes, investing in a movie is the next big thing. And so it became a hot trend in the 1990s and 2000s for venture capitalists, for Wall Street types to invest in movies. It's since kind of gone away, though, post-recession. Distribution may make investment because it is investing in movie itself. So companies that may be involved in distributing and marketing the movie itself may become involved in financing the movie. So if my movie is going to debut around the world, I might have a partner in Europe and one in Africa. And so I may speak to both and say, listen, you're going to have the rights to distribute and market my movie in your respective continents. Could you pony up any more money for me for my movie? I only got $50 million from Warner Brothers. It looks like I'm going to need 70. Yes, those conversations may happen. 40,000 screens in the US, generally speaking, and actually more and more screens are being built, believe it or not. And there are about 3,000 movie screens in Canada. There are 3 different strategies for releasing movies in movie theaters. First, there's kind of a limited release, 1 to 35 theaters. It could be an art house flick. Maybe you release it in a few theaters in Boston and LA and New York and Chicago and Miami, and maybe that's all you do. Second thing is a wide release, 2,500 to 4,000 movie screens, platform limited release. A few weeks later, release is expanded. To be careful and to drum up interest, this was done with the Blair Witch Project some 20 years ago. This was a movie that nobody thought was going to be doing well, and then they literally had to go from a limited release to a platform release to make sure that everybody could come see this particular movie. And so as you can see here in financing and in distributing movies, it becomes a really, really big, complex machine. On the one hand, you have to think about who's financing your work. Is it Disney, or is it also the Wanda Group in China? If it's also the Wanda Group in China, you may need to be careful about the content you have in your movie. Does it support Chinese ideals? Does it support Chinese government, perhaps? Is it threatening to any of the Chinese cultural ideals or political ideals? Additionally, you also want to think about, as you're financing your movie, who do you go to if you're having issues on the production set? Do you fire an actor? Do you fire a director? Do you fire a writer? Do you get somebody else in? Do you stop the movie? Do you rewrite the movie? All of these things take place during the filming of a particular movie. So it's a very high-stakes world that a lot of people are implicated in. And so that's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.